Hello Internet, I'm John Brill, and this is Accountability on the Local Level, Part 3. How big should a local governing body be? Most of the local governing bodies I have observed have 5 or 7 seats, but if we want to maximize the accountability of local governing bodies by shifting to a ward system and adding seats until each district is one-man campaign friendly, then the local governing body is going to become larger. But the larger the population of a locality, the more unwieldy the local governing body would be if the districts are so conducive to one-man campaigns. Basically, have you ever served on a committee? It can be like herding cats and pulling teeth. Coming to agreement takes time. Each person you add to the committee increases the complexity of coming to agreement, and as we have discussed, time is a finite resource for the local office holder. At such time as that we get to state legislative bodies, we can talk about the maximum size we might want the deliberative body to be and having seats that are full-time positions. But here on the local level, we're going to assume that the seats on the local governing body are part-time positions and that we would want the size of the local governing body to be nominally conducive to an office holder that also has a full-time job in addition to their government responsibilities. Consider the constraints of the part-time office holder. From talking with some part-time elected officials, I get the sense that being a local part-time elected official can consume an average of 10 to 20 hours per week. That means the average office holder that has a full-time regular job would have a 50 to 60 hour work week year-round. It might amount to the same amount of additional time as it took the candidate to campaign per week, but unlike campaigning, he would be paid for his time and that would make a big difference. But time would still be limited. So how big could a local governing body be, assuming that the offices are part-time positions, and push the boundaries for it still being a functional body? I don't know the answer to this question, and I doubt anybody does. It is not a subject that has received much concentrated study. In the last video, I used the example of 200,000, because with districts of 10,000 people, you could have a local governing body of 20, and that strikes me as an okay number to start with. Remember, we're not talking about the size of 100, 200, 300, 400, or even larger body. We don't want to set the part-time local office holder up to fail by making their local governing body so large that the average Joe who runs for office can't adequately do the job in a part-time capacity. But we do want to have a framework for how large of a body that we could have that would still be possible for a part-time elected official to operate in, even if just barely. I've served on a couple large volunteer committees that met infrequently with upwards of 40 people on them. And while not the same as an elected body, based upon my committee experience, I would be interested with experimenting with larger local governing bodies for part-time local office holders in the neighborhood of 20 seats. There are probably a lot of communities where the standard 5 or 7 seats is okay for accountability purposes, just add wards. But there are a lot of communities where the right number could very well be 15, 21, or 35. And who knows what a best practice upper limit really is. It could be a lot of numbers. I don't know. But whatever that number turns out to be, it has implications for how large localities should be. If in order to make one-man campaigns feasible, we can't have more than 10,000 people per district, and in order to have part-time elected local governing bodies, we can't have more than, say, 20 seats, then that would set the maximum size that we would want for a locality with part-time elected officials at 200,000. If we ditched the part-time restriction, making the offices full-time positions and paid the elected officials well, then that would be a horse of a different color, basically making the local governing body a full-time legislature. In which case, our county of 200,000 could easily have 67 seats with districts of 3,000 people apiece. Very one-man campaign friendly. For another example, a county with a population of 500,000 could have a 100-member local governing body and districts of 5,000, which is to point out that you could have quite a large population in your county and still make each district one-man campaign friendly. The trade-off is that you're not going to have part-time office holders, you'd have a larger local governing body, and you'd have all the problems associated with the larger size. Basically, there are reasons why a lot of people like the idea that their local office holders still have one foot planted firmly in the real world by having to provide value to their community through a private sector job. Also, it's a lot harder to walk away from a political office if it is your main source of income, whereas if you have to maintain a real job, then you know how you're going to pay the bills when you leave office. Anyway, below some number, certainly below 200,000, shifting to a ward system and adding more seats is most of the time going to be all that we need, I think, to make the local government more accountable to the people and have a functioning local governing body that is reasonable for the part-time office holder. But what about those localities that have significantly higher populations? How can they have a small local governing body and also have districts conducive to one-man campaigns and still have part-time office holders? Join me next time for part 4 of Accountability on the Local Level as we discuss how we can maximize accountability in really populous counties. The short answer? By partitioning counties into more counties. Thank you for watching, and if you like this, then click here to see more for Liberty.